Density is a measure of how close together particles are in a certain liquid. If they are close together, the object is considered at a higher density. If the pieces are further apart, the object is less dense because there is more space for air. So today we're going to be making a density column in which all of our materials are going to have a separate density, making it so that they do not connect or they do not spread into each other when they're poured into a clear glass. So for this experiment, you're going to need a clear container, something that you can pour something into, that you can be able to see the distinctions between the two. First, we're going to need vegetable oil, honey, dish detergent, a type of rubbing alcohol such as hydrogen peroxide, and water. We're going to have a 5-layer column. When we add our layers to our container, we're going to be basing it off of which has the highest density and which has the lowest. So according to our definition of density that we have so far, the lowest density is going to float above those as the density gets higher. So as we layer them into our container, we're going to place that with the highest density at the bottom, and then we are gradually going to decrease our density as we pour the layers. So starting our experiment, we are going to put the honey in at the bottom, which is understood because it has the highest density out of all of the materials that we're using. So we're going to put a good amount of honey in our container so that it has a clear line where we can place other things on top of it, but you want to make sure that it does not touch the side of the container. It only goes straight in the middle. Then we are going to place in the dish soap, which we know has a higher density than that above it, but a lower density than the honey. So we're also going to put in the dish soap on top of our honey, and you can already see that it is not combining with the honey, but that it's just going straight on top of it. And we're going to have enough added so that you will be able to tell the difference between the two. So if you can't see yet, I'll go ahead and show you. There's already clear distinction between the two, and that is due to their density. So the next layer that we're going to add is our water. It has a density of 1, which is an unknown fact in science. So we're going to need to use our food baser or our funnel so that the water does not go directly in, but that it goes down the side of our glass. So I'm going to pour the water in so that it just barely touches the side. So when I show you, you're going to be able to see that the water and the dish soap might have barely intersected, but they do not actually combine. The water is still very much its own layer. Next, we are going to add our vegetable oil, which has a lower density than the water, the dish soap, and the honey. So we're going to do the same thing that we did with the water, where we are going to pour it into the funnel. And as I pour, you will be able to see that this is going to make its own layer as well. The final layer that we are going to be using is the rubbing alcohol, which is going to be a little bit tricky because it has a cap on it. So this particular brand from Kroger has a squirt bottle that is going to be very useful in this experiment so that I can just squirt it onto the side rather than placing it into the funnel. So I am just going to squirt it onto the side of our cup. As you can see, some experiments do not always go to plan, but they always have a new reaction that could possibly take any form. So in our experiment, we did assume that the rubbing alcohol or the hydrogen peroxide had a lower density than the corn syrup or the vegetable oil, sorry. In this experiment, it actually shows us that the rubbing alcohol had a higher density than the vegetable oil, and it actually reacted with our vegetable oil and our water to create bubbles. So that can show your reaction in a different way. But this is a perfect example of how density comes into effect when you're looking at different materials. So we have our honey at the bottom, our dish detergent second to the bottom, and then we have water. Next, we have our rubbing alcohol, and then finally we have our vegetable oil. You can see that the density of the 5 is much different, and they all have their own layer. This experiment can be used using any type of material that you can find at your home. For this experiment, just make sure that you look up what the density is of each of the materials so that you can be able to know which layer to put in first in order to make sure that none of them congeal or come together during the experiment. Thank you for watching.